Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for attending this webinar. My name is Shira Makluf. I'm a director of business development at the Freeman Group, a consultancy that specializing in helping companies from the life sciences field to secure money from non-dilutive sources of funding in the US. And today we're going to talk about funding opportunities for combating the opioid crisis. Especially today during the COVID-19 times, this topic is extremely relevant and we'll touch upon it in a few minutes. We will have enough time for Q&As at the end of the presentation, but in the meantime, please feel free to write me your questions in the question bar on the side. Okay, so let's start. So the opioid epidemic is definitely a public health challenge. How it started since 2015, life expectancy in the US entered a period of sustained decline, which hasn't occurred in about 100 years. Last time this occurred was between 1915 and 1918 during the First World War and after the Spanish influenza pandemic. The cause of the decline was a surge of drug overdoses and suicides, both linked to the use of opioid drugs. Here we can see a curve of the overdose death rates involving opioid. As you can see here, and this is taken from the CDC website, across the US we have seen an alarming trend in increases in drug overdose death, specifically overdose death from prescriptions and illicit opioids have more than quadrupled in the United States since 1999. Now you can see here in the curve that the peak was in 2017, where more than 48,000 people basically have died from opioid overdose. So let's share a bit statistics and numbers about this crisis. Healthcare providers prescribed about 72.4 opioid prescriptions per 100 person in 2006. In 2017, about 11 years later, 17.4% of the U.S. population received one or more opioid prescriptions, with the average person receiving 3.4 prescriptions, which is really well, insane. I have no other or better word to describe it. So how it all started, I don't know, I guess most of you are from the US and you're probably aware of that problem, but how it all started. So it started in the 80s when pain became increasingly recognized as a healthcare issue. Then pharmaceutical companies introduced a new opioid-based painkiller in the mid of 1990s and promoted these products heavily. And they emphasized that those drugs are safe and they have efficacy and they have low potential for addiction, which it wasn't true actually. Until then, opioids were prescribed mainly for short-term uses, such as pain relief after surgery or people with advanced cancer, for example. And those pharmaceutical companies, they knew that long-term use of opioid drugs, with the long-term use, people can develop tolerance to the drugs and even become more sensitive to the pain. So let's see, share a bit more numbers about this crisis. More than 183,000 people have died in the United States from overdoses related to prescriptions opioids from 1999 until 2015. We can see that 2 million people had an opioid use disorder in 2018, and on average, 130 Americans die every day from an opioid overdose. Now, during the COVID-19, I think it's a really sad subject here, an epidemic during a pandemic. The opioid epidemic during the coronavirus pandemic, the AMA, the American Medical Association, just shown in a study that there was an increase in opioid-related overdose and other concerns during COVID-19 pandemic. And the reason is that COVID-19 related protective shelter-in-place orders have pushed individuals battling with severity into isolation and have decreased access to treatment and opioid and opportunity for distraction from addictions. So basically, social distancing is potentially concealing an increase of opioid abuse and resulting morbidity and mortality larger than we ever saw in the past. So based on that, how the HHS, which is the US Department of Health and Human Services, how is it going to fight and overcome this epidemic? So among other activities, such as empower consumers to make safe choices and support providers, health system, etc., their main activity is to conduct surveillance and research. And because of this initiative, they started the HIL initiative, and I'm sure most of you are aware of this initiative. It's helping to end the addiction long term. And this is under NIH, National Institute of Health, and the objective of the NIH is to support research to increase pain management capabilities and improve treatment for opioid misuse and addiction. The budget of this initiative is $945 million, and about 12 different NIH institutes are participating in this initiative, and they cover everything from basic science to implementation research. Now, I wanted to give some examples of the funding opportunities available under the HIL initiative. So the first one is called America's Startup and Small Businesses Build Technologies to Stop the Opioid Crisis. With this opportunity, clinical trials is optional. You don't have to have some plans for clinical trials. You can be still in a preclinical stage. And the purpose of this funding opportunity is to help to develop technologies to provide science and research-based solution for the national opioid epidemic. This includes therapeutic solutions, diagnostic, and even prevention of the opioid addiction. This opportunity as basically rolling deadlines. The next deadlines are September 8th, 2020. The next one afterwards is April 9th, 2021. The budget, basically it's an SBIR mechanism. So the budget is a typical SBIR budget. It can go up to $225,000 for phase 1 and about $1.5 million for a phase 2. And only US-based companies are eligible to submit this SBIR. Another interesting program under the HIL initiative is the development of therapies and technologies directed at enhanced pain management. Here, clinical trials are required. And unlike the first opportunity, this opportunity is focused on pain management and not to find solutions for the opioid addiction. As I said, clinical trials here are required, and the due dates, the next due dates are September 9th and January 6th, 2021. The budget is a typical SBIR budget as well. And again, since it's an SBIR mechanism, only US-based companies are eligible to submit this SBIR. Now, the HIL initiative has research spotlights, and every now and then they updating the list of the research spotlights. As for now, help for babies born dependent on opioids is, I guess, the main focus, but they also focus, and they have also funded companies that had projects related to next generation device that could relieve phantom limb pain, also chronic low back pain solutions. So those, as for now, those are the I guess, spotlights and focus of the HEAL initiative. Now, I think that's a good summary of the HEAL initiative and the funding opportunities. Obviously, there are other funding opportunities that are relevant to US companies and non-US companies, but I wanted to give you a taste. Other than the HEAL initiative, and as I said, the HEAL initiative is an initiative that many NIH's institutes are participating in. The main institute that actually covers the HEAL initiative is NIDA, under NIH, of course. It's the National Institute on Drug Abuse. NIDA is the lead federal agency supporting scientific research on drug use and its consequences. And I wanted to give you some examples of opportunities that could be submitted or could be applied to NIDA, but also also could be relevant also to the opioid crisis, if it's therapeutic solutions, or to prevent addiction, or even to for pain management. Now, this opportunity, development of medications to prevent and treat opioid use disorders and overdose, it's a UG3 UH3 mechanism. The clinical trial is optional. And this mechanism is actually a pretty interesting one. The UG3, it's the first kind of, the mechanism is split into two. The UG3 is the first step, or like the phase one, I would say. So the UG3 supports a project with specific milestone to be accomplished by the end of the second year. So they actually give you milestones, and you need to basically report them at the end of the second year to see that you have accomplished the milestones. And the UH3 is provided funding for 3 years after you successfully manage to conduct the UG3 mechanism. The application, the due dates, basically it's a rolling deadline application. So it started in February, and since then, I think by the end of 2021, you can submit an application anytime. And the budget here is pretty high. We're talking about the application budget are limited to $3 million per year for direct cost. Obviously, on top of that, you can add indirect cost, about 8 to 40%. And the maximum period is of support is about 5 years. Another interesting solicitation or opportunity, or two of them, are through the parent announcement or the investigator-initiated mechanisms. The names of the mechanisms are Research Project Grant, where a clinical trial is required, and the companion opportunity is the NIH Research Project Grant, where a clinical trial is not allowed. NIDA, National Institute on Drug Abuse, is participating in both opportunities. And as I said, it's a parent announcement or investigator initiated. You need to submit an application describing what you do, describing your goals, your science, your budget, and everything you need to fill in the application. And if the program officers of NIDA like what they see, and they think it actually fit their interest, your application could be awarded. Now, the due date of the parent announcements, or the next one, is October 5th, 2020. And the budget is not limited. The maximum project period is about 5 years. Typically, the budget is about $500,000 per year for 5 years. So it could go up to $2.5 million for direct cost. And as I said, on top of that, you can add a percentage for overhead costs as well. So this was under NIH, the HEAL initiative, the NIDA opportunities. Now I want to speak about the Department of Defense. Under Department of Defense, there are two funding mechanisms that could fund projects related to opioid crisis or opioid overdose. The first one is under the US Army, the USAMRC. and it has a specific program for pain management. The primary interest of the pain management program area is to management of acute and chronic pain associated with traumatic or combat-related injuries. And here they look for alternatives, interventions to current opioid analgesics, of course, for pain management. There is no due date, and the budget is unlimited. Basically, under this broad agency announcement, you can submit an application anytime during the year, and the budget will be a reflection of your needs. Last but not least is the CDMRP program. The CDMRP program, it's the congressionally directed medical research program under, again, Department of Defense, and they have a specific program for chronic pain management research program, and it's an investigator-initiated research award. They ask for novel non-opioid receptor targeted therapies for the treatment of chronic pain. So please pay attention that here, unlike the US Army, we're talking about chronic pain and not acute pain. And this, unlike the US Army opportunity, there are specific deadlines for the CDMRP programs. Usually the CDMRP program comes out once a year. And I didn't say that beforehand, this program is dedicated to the veterans and their families, and thus it covers many indications in the life sciences. It could oncology, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, infectious diseases, and chronic pain. So as I said, this program comes out once a year in the springtime, and actually here the pre-application submission deadline is August 7. The pre-application submission deadline is followed by the invitation to submit a full application if the program officers are interested in what we do. And the full application deadline is November 6th. So you'll have plenty of time to write the full application. And the budget here is $900,000. Now, after we talked about the opportunities for the opioid crisis, or to treat the opioid crisis, or even to find solution or other non-opioid solutions for pain management, it's really important to understand how to maximize your chances of award. So firstly, you need to seek insight into the interests and goals of the funding agencies. If you could speak with program officers beforehand to make sure that your project fits their interests, fits what they're looking to fund. Also, of course, look at the solicitation, make sure that your project is, again, fit their solicitations and the topics. That's extremely important. Stay the course and ensure to correlate your granting strategy with your long-term R&D plan. Of course, you need to apply to the funding agencies for your long-term R&D plan and not your plan in the next couple of months, because it will take time. Typically, we know that the more applications you submit, the better your chances are, and that's why we encourage our clients to submit as many applications as possible to different agencies. So you could apply to NIH, to both NIH and DoD. Of course, it really depends on the application and the solicitations. And also know your weaknesses and find partners if necessary. Now, some tips for the submission process. As I said, you should read the solicitation carefully to make sure that you didn't miss any part of the application. Choose the right topic and funding opportunity, and remember that the pre-application is critical part of the process, as I mentioned, for especially the CDMRP program under Department of Defense. Ensure your team is registered ahead of time and keep track of the key dates. That is also extremely important for the CDMRP, where you have a pre-application date and a full application date. So that was it in a nutshell. Thank you very much all for attending this webinar. We have some time for Q&As. Let's see. Okay, so no questions. So I will send you tomorrow morning the slide deck of this webinar. Also, the webinar and the video will be available on our YouTube channel, so you can definitely watch it again if you'd like. And you are more than welcome to contact me if you have any questions or issue we need to kind of solve with me. So thank you very much, everything, for attending this webinar, and take care.